I'm a bad motherfucker.
On Rumble, I have special guest Dr. Pierre Kory is a pulmonary and critical care medicine specialist and former associate professor and chief of the critical care service at the University of Wisconsin. He's also the president and chief medical officer for the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance and the author of the recently published book, The War on Ivermectin, the medicine that saved millions and could have ended the pandemic. Wow, that's a big statement. Welcome back to the show, friend of the show, Dr. Pierre Kory.
Hey, Jimmy, you already had me laughing. I don't know why.
It's because you're pretending ivermectin could treat COVID, and you're such a good kidder. We all know the FDA and the CDC says it can. But anyway, I wanted to talk.
Wait, I thought we're not on YouTube, are we?
No, but I'm going to show this on YouTube, hopefully, unless you go off the fucking rails. Okay. Okay, I wanted to show you this, right? So, this guy is now this is the head of the FDA now. This guy, Dr. Robert M. Califf, and he tweeted out, "We are facing extraordinary headwinds in our public health with a major decline in life expectancy. Oh, hang on, do I have jokes for this? Yes, I do. Hold on. Okay, I got it. Okay. So we are facing headwinds in our public health with a major decline in life expectancy. The major decline in the U.S. is not just a trend. I describe it as catastrophic. Headwinds? I would think that the wind is coming all from your head. That's what I would say. It's blowing in every direction, but towards the real cause. How about that? He goes on to say, JAMA, that's the Journal of American Medicine, Internal Medicine published earlier this month that our overall life expectancy has dropped to 76 years. And remarkably, that male life expectancy in the United States has dropped to 73 years. Wow. Wow. Since then, the CDC released a report showing a slight rebound from lower life expectancy caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, is that what was causing it? Huh. Well, jab me with a brr. Even with this encouraging report, we still have a lot of work to do before we see pre-pandemic life expectancy again. It's just amazing how all our health experts seem to be baffled, completely baffled by the decline in health of the people whose health that they were in charge of. Isn't that amazing? So here's an article that you wrote in The Hill. It says, "This is bigger than COVID. Why are so many Americans dying early?" And I'll read a few paragraphs from it. His post, which hit on smoking, diet, chronic illness, and healthcare, ignored the obvious. People are dying in abnormally high numbers, even now, and long since COVID-19 waned. Yet public health agencies and medical societies are silent. Life insurers have been consistently sounding the alarm over these unexpected or excess deaths, which claimed 158,000 more Americans in the first 9 months of 2023 than in the same period in 2019. That exceeds America's combined losses from every war since Vietnam. Hey, move over, Vietnam. We've got a winner. Big Pharma took over where barbaric, pointless warfare dropped off. Congratulations to Big Pharma. Actual reports used by insurers to inform decisions show deaths occurring disproportionately among young, working-age people. Nonetheless, America's chief health manager, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, opted in September, get this, to archive its excess death webpage with a note stating, "These data sets will no longer be updated."
Wait, what?
Yeah.
That seems bigger than anything with COVID, like real big. That seems like everything's going according to plan.
Boy, why would you want to spend any time trying to figure out what's killing all the kids today? It's going to rob you of your precious time focusing on who hacked Taylor Swift's live show.
Look, you didn't want to cut Social Security. They got to do something.
They got to do something. In 2020, death claims took their biggest one-year leap since the 1918 influenza scourge, jumping 15.4% to $90 billion in payouts. After hitting $100 billion in 2021, claims slowed in 2022 but are still way above 2019. Indemnity experts are urging the adoption of an early warning program to detect looming health problems among people with life insurance and keep them alive.
So this is about them not losing money. The only reason we even know about this is because somebody's losing money on it. And it's life insurers. That's right. Yeah.
The life insurers.
Yeah.
I can't believe they're putting up with this. So here's my last slide on this. It says, for people 65 and over, death is in the second quarter of 2026 was actually 6% below the pre-pandemic norm, according to a new report from the society. So that means it's not old people that are dying right now. It's young people that are dying. Mortality was 26% higher among insured 35 to 44-year-olds. Wow. And 19% higher for 25 to 34-year-olds, continuing a death spike that peaked in the third quarter of 2021 at a staggering 101% and 79% above normal, respectively. Now, why isn't anybody, let's bring in Dr. Pierre Kory, why is this not a bigger story? Why isn't this not front page news? More people dying than from all the wars since. Why aren't public health officials also screaming and clamoring, trying to figure this out and help our own people? Take it away.
Those are all very good questions. Why aren't they doing something? And I mean, Jimmy, you know the answer, but I can help you or help your listeners. I mean, we're witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe unleashed by these vaccines. I mean, all that data that I put forth, it's even worse than that. I mean, when you look at the actuarial data, you see who died. It was literally the healthiest, most employed, most educated Americans dying at rates never seen outside of wartime. And you're only left with one question. I'll answer your question with the question. Jimmy, do you know what happened in the American workplace in the third quarter of 2021? Was any new rules, regulations, anything happened to like the corporate workplace in 2021?
I think there were some vaccines that were mandated.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, universities, schools, businesses, government, healthcare, and you see this outrageous spike in those actuarial tables. And to your point before, and I think it's a fair point, the most compelling and the most insane data is coming out of the life insurance industry. Now, they're the only ones who's sort of talking about it. They're just talking about the deaths. They don't want to put a reason behind it. But here's the thing. It is in their incentive to do something about this. But although that seems like very cynical or self-interested, keep in mind that if you look at the history of the life insurance industry, they've helped improve building codes, electrical codes, nautical safety, maritime safety, car safety, automobile safety, fire safety, right? They are in the business of trying to keep us, from dying. And by the way, what do you think it does to a life insurance company when a 22-year-old who's just started paying into a life insurance policy dies, right? I mean, those are huge losses that they're seeing.
So you're saying it's not because people are watching too much late night TV and snacking on crunchy food, or
well, unless those were introduced into the American diet in the third quarter of 2021. I mean, to me, it's all about temporal association, and I mean, obesity. Even and I've heard like mass media journalists trying to come up with alternative explanations. Like the opioid epidemic. We unleashed fentanyl on the streets in 2021, right? It's been around for 10 years. We know the opiates are a big cause of deaths among young people, but these were not drug deaths. They were not COVID deaths. A lot of them were unexpected. We have data from around the world, like in Canada. I think the number one or the number three cause of death now is unknown, where they don't really have a reason. And that's skyrocketed out of nowhere. That's never happened.
Oh,
before.
SADS, like SIDS, sudden adult death. They made one for crib death for adults. I forgot. They called SADS.
Yep, that's it. And then, Jimmy, one last point. That drop, Caleb calling out the drop in life expectancy is truly shocking. I mean, it went from 79 to 76 in 3 years. Since 2020, our life expectancy used to be 79, now it's 76. Jimmy, I don't know how good you are at arithmetic, but who has to die to bring the average life expectancy down 3? Is it the 80-year-olds who are dying or the
Right.
That's
20?
right. That's right. So it's got to be the young people dying.
Yeah.
And let's
It's
remember,
outrageous.
as I point out in my COVID Lies Are Funny special, that the average age of death from COVID was 82 years old. So all the fear-mongering and scaremongering they did, it turned out, just as Bill Gates admitted at the end of the pandemic, or at the right after he cashed in his stock for the Pfizer vaccine, after he cashed that in, he admitted that COVID was a lot like the flu. It affected most of the elderly. It had a low fatality rate, and it was very much like the flu. And so the average age of death was 82 years old, and now the average life expectancy is only 76. So you can't scare people with those kind of numbers, right? I mean, to get a vaccine, you can't scare them with those kind of numbers because it's just old people dying. The way old people always died from viruses. That's the way, nature shakes off old people. I look forward to my virus when I'm 94 years old, and it'll get me. But
I'm just relieved, Jimmy, that so many migrants are flooding over the border to replace those worker and military age young people.
That's right. Well, it seems like that is what's happening. So you died. You have a direct connection with the vaccine, doctor, right?
There's not even a question, because I think the deeper question, right, is you asked the question, why aren't we? Why isn't something? Why aren't we addressing this, right? So that life insurance quote, when they're talking about how to predict these events, they're literally. I've worked with some of those executives in the insurance. They're asking us our opinions on what markers they can test. They're worried about all of the things that we know about, like the microclotting, everything that's happening in the body that's causing these deaths, the distribution of spike. They want to try to find markers and something to mitigate all of the dying. And there's not enough research. It would take, the government should be funding a massive study into not only epidemiologically, but pathophysiological and exactly what they're dying from, how, and can it be prevented. But here's the problem, Jimmy, and this is what you know. The reason why nothing's being done is because to do something, you have to identify the problem, or you have to talk about the problem. You have to admit that the vaccines are the cause. And you can see that around the world, there's no appetite for doing that. I mean, the psychology of all of those, obsessive pro-vaxxers and all the people who coerced and lost our livelihoods, and they literally are responsible for this massive waves of death. And it's not just this country. The UK seeing it. A lot of countries, excess mortality is up around the world. And so who wants to talk about that when you were part of that? If you were responsible, there's zero appetite to it. And then also all the moneyed interest that made all those hundreds of billions of dollars, do they want to talk about how they made that money on the back of a wave of death?
So the UK actually, they were pretending that they were going to start an inquiry into this. And I don't know if you've caught the latest on this, that they had a government panel. They were going to do an inquiry into the excess deaths and where are they coming from. It's been suspended. They're not actually going to have it. And it's been suspended indefinitely. And the last word was that they hope that they could get this panel, this inquiry done by 2026. Have you heard that?
Well, I know MP Andrew Bridge, and he and I have worked, I went and testified in the parliament with him. I know he's the one who got that hearing. I did not know that it get deferred or canceled. I mean, I've run out of words, Jay. I don't know. I mean, the whole thing is a farce. I mean, this is a cartoon clown world we live in. I mean, no one's behaving like adult. No one's actually being a professional, doing the tasks and the things that we're responsible for. I mean, like you said, I thought we were responsible for preserving the health of our countrymen and our fellow citizens, and we're doing the opposite. And no one's doing anything to stop it. I mean, it's just us, shouting from the sidelines. We're calling foul from the sidelines, and no one's hearing our whistles.
Well, I guess we need to wait for Jimmy Kimmel to get the because he was certainly on the forefront of, if you didn't get your vaccine, you were an asshole and you should be denied medical treatment. But now that it's clear that the vaccines are killing people by the tens and hundreds of thousands in one country alone, nobody has anything to say about it.
I mean, it cuts down on medical clogging up the medical system, I guess, if you just drop dead at a very young age.
So let me ask you this question. So I got double vaxxed, and I never got a booster or anything. And I'm being treated still for that vaccine injury I got from that Moderna double vax for COVID. I went and got my heart checked right when I figured out I was vaccine injured, and they put me through what all the checks you can give somebody for a heart, and my cardiologist said that I have zero blockage in my arteries in my heart, which made me feel good. Should does that mean I'm clear for the myocarditis, or do I still have to worry about it? Do I still have to worry is what I'm asking.
No, at this point, this far out, no, absolutely not. Those kind of acute events, especially the myocarditis and pericarditis, they're much closer to vaccination than now. Most of the epidemiologic data, although I used to say this more confidently, because now I'm seeing data that things can happen farther out than a year. But I'll just say something safe. The farther you're out from your last vaccine, the more likely you're going to be okay. And at this point, with your heart and you being this far out, Jimmy, you're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you, Dr. Kory, have you heard, I just saw this randomly too, but so bodybuilders typically die very young because of all the stuff they're on, but bodybuilders, like guys young in their 40s, they've died at like a rate that's like this. Normally they die like this shocking deaths because all the crap they put in their bodies, but they're like extra going over because I guess they already had enlarged hearts from taking all kinds of hormones and what have you. Have you heard anything about that? About the vet? Because it's really crazy when you see some of these people were like real gung ho for the jab. One guy goes, "If I die," he goes, "I really believe it. If I die from this, then you'll know." And then he died. Right?
And then he died.
Yeah, like that's wild. I mean, they test a lot of stuff out on themselves, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific data on bodybuilders except for what you said, which is like anecdotal media reports of, especially in social media, those who were very publicly pro-vaccine, and then they died. And at this point, a young person dying unexpectedly, to me, unfortunately, it is the vaccine until proven otherwise. I mean, just recently, I posted a Substack post. There's a disabled veteran who lost some friends to what he believed was the vaccine. And he did this really interesting search. He looked at this obituary database and he searched all the obits for the last 7 years for the words sudden or unexpected. And the data that he found was just incredible. Like those words had a pretty stable frequency from 2016 to 2019 to 2020. It's even dropped in 2020. 2021 and 2022, I mean, it's almost doubled the amount of obituaries which use the word sudden and unexpected. So, I mean, it's happened to more than bodybuilders. It's happened to a lot of people. And like we talked about, a lot of young people.
So, and I think another reason why we'll never really get to the bottom of this, and there won't be a reckoning like they had in South Africa with the Truth and Reckoning Commission. There'll never be a Truth and Reckoning Commission for this vaccine or the COVID rollout or the lot, is because everybody was involved with it, right? So like most doctors, my doctor, most doctors told you to get the vaccine. Most doctors administered the vaccine. Most doctors shamed people for not getting the vaccine. Most newscasters did. Most politicians. And that's why there's no interest in anybody to actually look into this, except for a handful of people like yourself, Dr. Malone, McCullough, and, a couple of people in the UK Parliament, and that's it, right?
It's so few. I mean, especially in the UK. When I was in the UK testifying in that Parliament meeting, MP Bridgen, he told me that he's literally the only guy in Britain. He's vilified all across Britain. He's been absolutely spot on correct about everything COVID. And what was interesting about that hearing is about, I think, like 20 to 25 MPs actually showed up, and they were told not to show up. But we did have an audience of MPs. But he's told me privately, he's the only one out in public, but he says he's got about 30 plus other members of Parliament who are really behind him, Jimmy. Go, Andrew, go, Andrew. They do this silently and behind the scenes, but it's really only him taking all the flack. And I like your point a lot right there, Jimmy, about basically, I guess what we're asking for is for people to investigate themselves and send themselves to jail and punish themselves, right? By this, truth and reckoning thing. I mean, literally those in power now have to, find out or investigate that they were the cause and then hold themselves accountable and responsible. That's never going to happen, right?
Right. So the one thing, I'm not an expert on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, but I think that everybody who was guilty of crimes were given like immunity.
Yeah.
And so they were encouraged, that would encourage them to tell the truth about what happened, and so it could never happen again and all those things. So maybe we would just have to pass some kind, I mean, I know Dr. Fauci should be in prison and he's an unbelievable criminal. And I mean, of the highest order, I mean, if it, so this, he's killed more people than Hitler, pushing the not only the gain of function research that gave us this virus, then lying about it, shaming anybody who knew the truth about it, but then pushing this pretend cure for it, which it never was a cure. It was never even a therapeutic. It's a thing that makes people sicker. And the Cleveland Clinic study found that out. The more times you get this vaccine, the more sicker you get from COVID, and the more likely you are to get it. It has the exact opposite. And so if that's true, which it is true, then Dr. Fauci is a murderer on a higher scale than Adolf Hitler. And that's not hyperbole, right?
Not at all. I mean, I published an op-ed last Friday in the Federalist, and it was like the #2 story for 4 days. It really stayed up. Showed a lot of interest. Jimmy, I did 21 podcast and radio interviews last week over that op-ed. People are real. There's a lot of people in this country who know exactly what you just said about Fauci is true, but I took him down for everything that he supposedly said. Remember, we don't have a transcript of his testimony. He was on the Hill, but I nailed him for everything. I mean, every single policy in COVID was wrong, was divorced from the science, and it was harmful, if not harmful, catastrophic. From lockdowns to the vaccines, the mandates, the suppression of early treatment. I mean, you cannot paint a worse disaster that he was the head of, and yet he walks out of Capitol Hill in his little shoes and his little suit and scurries off to wherever the hell he came from. It's really tough to watch. And I don't know. I tried to hold him accountable, and that op-ed got a lot of attention.
I can't believe. I'm sorry I missed it. I wish you would have sent it to me. Then I get stuff sent to me all the time. Our good friend, our mutual friend, sends me things. So okay, so it's official. We can't put this video up on YouTube, but we can put the first part up and then tell people to come see the cause of all this excess deaths. Come to our Rumble video. And so there's one more thing. You tweeted this out today. It said, recently we put out a call for COVID vaccine shedding reports that was seen by almost, can you show, who's directing? Andrew? Recently we put out a call for COVID vaccine shedding reports that was seen by almost 1 million people. From the data we received, clear and consistent patterns could be seen, i.e. menstrual issues are the most common injury. Please share your story. So what have you learned from the hundreds of vaccine shedding reports, Dr. Kory?
The shedding is, we don't know how common it is. But
what is shedding?
Okay, yes. Let me explain what shedding is. So actually, it's important. I don't want to get too geeky, but shedding traditionally was a term that described what happened after you got what are called live attenuated vaccines, meaning if you got like a mild form of a live virus, that's used to be how they vaccinated, you were at risk of some of those viral particles or viruses being shed from one person to another. But that's the old definition of shedding. When you're talking about mRNA technology, which is a gene therapy, it's also categorized as a nanoparticle technology. But when you're talking about shedding here, what we're talking about is the products of the gene therapy. So what is that product? The main one that we believe is the one that's causing the symptoms in people who are getting shed upon is the spike protein. That is the pathogen and the toxin. So, you're injecting people, giving the people cells genetic instructions to make this protein. The protein then gets encased in biological nanoparticles, which are called exosomes. And exosomes, if you learn about nanoparticle technology and exosomes, it's absolutely astonishing. They can be excreted from almost any fluid, even the breath, and they can cross all sorts of biological barriers. They can cross the skin, the eyes, they can be inhaled and go into the cells. And what's just fascinating about it is that what we know about shedding is only really relevant to a minority. We don't know how large or small that minority is, but they tend to be very physiologically or environmentally sensitive people. Not always, but those are the ones that it happens to. And we started seeing it in my practice. And, that tweet and that article was written by a close colleague of mine that I work with. He goes by a pseudonym. He's an excellent writer and researcher on Substack. His name is, their name is A Midwestern Doctor. And we do a lot of work together, and we're particularly interested in shedding. And so we've been cataloging lots and lots of reports. I've been reviewing and trying to compile and present the science on my Substack, because you got to understand something, Jimmy. Shedding for gene therapy is well known by the FDA. In fact, the FDA in 2015 said that all gene therapy products must undergo human shedding studies. Did they happen in with these vaccines? They did not. Remember, we're doing science at warp speed. And then secondly, is that all of the products, the other gene therapy products on the market, all have inserts which basically say that you have to take care of the wound, the dressings, the fluids, even the feces for a certain amount of time after injection, because the gene therapy products are being shed. So in my opinion, all gene therapy products shed, these mRNA vaccines shed, and we're compiling and categorizing all of the reports. And typically the most common, like by far the most common shedding symptom, it happens to women more than men, and it's basically menstrual and pregnancy related adverse effects. Lots of problems with menstruation in women who are sensitive to being shed upon.
So what you're saying is that women who did not get a COVID-19 vaccine, they can get the bad part of the vaccine in their body, just by coming in contact with someone who was vaccinated.
100%. And I think it happens to all of us, but only some of us are develop symptoms as a result. And this exploded as a topic very early on in the campaign. I mean, there were Facebook groups, massive Facebook groups of women reporting that after everyone started getting vaccinated, those who were unvaccinated started developing horrendous menstrual abnormalities. And of course, those Facebook groups got shut down. But we have an immense amount of data. There's also a study that's, I know the authors, and I have a description of the study they did, but they essentially exposed unvaccinated women to vaccinated women. I don't know the nature or the duration of the exposure, but that paper apparently is about 2 weeks from publication and final acceptance. But it's a positive study. It definitely shows that you can induce menstrual irregularities in after exposure to vaccinated people. We think that it's much more common in the recently vaccinated, but some of the sensitive folks, they can tell who's vaccinated. They know. Some of them really can tell, and it happens much less outdoors. And the other really troubling thing here, Jim, is in my patients are already ill with vaccine injury syndrome, and some of them are actually sensitive to being exposed to others. They go to crowds, they go to grocery stores, they can't do it. And now, beyond all of the suffering and isolation from their illness they already have had to endure, they now have to make behavioral and lifestyle changes to avoid being around folks with that are vaccinated. It's really shocking. And I think, my partner, a Midwestern doctor, and myself, we believe we're trying to bring attention to this because we believe this may be one of the most impactful discoveries that might get these mRNA vaccines stopped and pulled off the market. I'm not holding my breath. If we can't talk about the excess death, obviously they're going to be safe and effective forever. But I'm going down in this fighting to try to prove to the world that we cannot continue with this technology. I mean, these things shed. We know the other products shed. These vaccines are shedding their product, which is the spike protein, and it's making quite a few people sick.
So the exact opposite of what we were told, right? So that it was the unvaccinated people who were a threat to your grandma and a threat to other people. It's actually the exact opposite. The people who are vaccinated are a threat to everybody who's unvaccinated, because now you're going to get this poison, which is the spike protein, through a process called shedding, even if you didn't get vaccinated, and you're going to have side effects from a vaccine you didn't take because you got in contact with someone who did take the vaccine. This is what you're saying.
Yes, and I can make it even worse for you, but let me make one correction. It's not only the unvaccinated who are sensitive to shedding. I have vaccine injured patients who are sensitive to other people who are vaccinated. And so, but it's predominantly, I think, most described in the unvaccinated, but I certainly have some vaccinated. The other really scary thing, this one I'm worried about me. Whereas I've been around thousands of people. I travel, I speak a lot. Actually, most of the crowds I'm in, probably the vaccination rates are really pretty low, but I'm not affected by anything. I don't get any symptoms from being exposed to anyone. But here's my worry about me, is that the products of that vaccine can be encased in these exosomes. These exosomes can be freely emitted and absorbed. And then this latest chapter, which is the DNA plasmid contamination, where the scientists who are looking at the contents of these vials, they found in every Moderna and Pfizer vial, they found immense levels of DNA plasmid contamination, which is from the manufacturing process. DNA plasmids can go into exosomes. They could be emitted. I could be absorbing them. So now I got to get this contaminated DNA, which could then go into my body and integrate into my genome. I mean, we don't really have an active commercial test for that, although I know it's being developed to look to see if any of the DNA plasmids are being integrated. But I almost don't want to know the answer. I mean, there's nothing I can do. I'm powerless over the answer.
So this is a great platform for things other than vaccine, I bet.
So the mRNA. So let me just, you can explain to me. So here's what I think. So a regular vaccine that we used to get, like for measles and and polio, it gave you a weakened version of that virus, and you injected it into yourself, and then your body created an immune response to it. Now the mRNA, what it does, you inject this mRNA into you, and then your body generates this thing called the spike protein, which is like a poison. And before, when you got the old vaccine, you knew exactly how much of the poison you were giving someone. But now your body is going to continually keep making this poison. Sometimes it makes it in your heart. Sometimes it makes it in your ovaries. Sometimes it makes it in your liver. It can make it in your kidneys. It can go to all different organs in your body, and it will just start to make this. So they don't even know how much your body's going to make. So when you were getting the old vaccines, they knew exactly, precisely how much of this, for lack of a better term, poison they were going to put into you. Now your body just manufactures this poison, and they don't know how much you're getting. Is that correct? Am I close to what?
It's 100%. The studies that are looking for spike protein persistence, you can find patients making spike up to the one study I saw, it's up to 187 days later. You can still find spike protein circulating, unbound by antibodies. And you're absolutely right. This whole farce of it stays in your arm. Nanoparticles do not stay in the arm. They are absolutely well known. Those lipid nanoparticles are tiny. And the reason why they're used is because they can cross the cell membrane and enter cells really well by keeping their cargo, which is the mRNA, protected. But those nanoparticles, they can distribute widely in the body. We know that from FOIA documents, like you said, ovaries, brain, spleen, anywhere. And so it's the most absurd adoption of a technology that has been so poorly understood and tested, and really by all of its mechanics. What I'm discovering, by the way, my discoveries of this shedding, I've only been starting to do the research in a couple of months ago. And I mean, my jaw dropped when I started reading into this, and I started looking at review papers of nanoparticle technology from 15, 20 years ago. All the papers warn of the potential toxicities, the potential transmission, unintentional exposures to others. I mean, it's in all the papers for 20 years. And yet this is what we decide to do to vaccinate the world?
It's hard to believe that more doctors didn't stand up against this. It's hard to believe that there was only a few of you out there. How shocked are you that there were so few doctors? I mean, if it's been known for 20 years, I mean, I have videos of Dr. Fauci and thinking in 2019 before saying that if we try to develop a new vaccine like this, it's going to take 10 years. Yep. And then they did it in 3 months. So why are you shocked that there weren't more doctors out there saying things?
I am absolutely shocked. When I started to speak out, I didn't know that I would be so vilified and attacked and these media hit jobs. I literally thought people would be like, "Hey, thank you for your contributions." Sorry, Jimmy. I've come a long way since the beginning.
Yeah.
I was pretty naive back then, but certainly that's not what happened to me. But literally, when I started speaking out and talking about treatments and doing things, I thought I'd have my colleagues to my right and my left, and we'd all be on the same page. Like, come on, let's do this better and let's figure this out. And instead, it was just like me and my small band of brothers and sisters. It was not a large contingent that were really pushing back, saying, "This is crazy what you're doing. Let's be sensible. Let's do the right thing. Let's figure this out." And we were attacked for just putting out common sense.
So now I was vaccine injured, and so do I need to worry about being around vaccinated people who are getting their boosters? Because my old roommate, I went to his Christmas party. He was bragging he just got his booster, and
no,
okay,
no, I don't believe so. If you went to the Christmas party and felt fun and had a good time, you don't have to worry about symptoms from shedding. The people who have to learn. Maybe some people listen and be like, you know what? I do feel weird sometimes when I go over to Jimmy's, John, I won't say Jimmy, John's house or some friend of theirs. They might now understand it. Because let me give you a quick example. I saw a patient of mine 2 weeks ago. A lot of my patients read my Substack. And so they actually were very well versed in the shedding science and what I was writing on my Substack. But this patient, out of the blue, in the middle of the visit, he said, and he was not doing well that day. And he says to me, he says, Dr. Kory, something weird is happening. He's like, I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go to Trader Joe's. If I go into Trader Joe's, within 5 minutes, I feel just terrible and I have to leave and go to the car. And he said, it happened the other day. We went to a farmer's market. It was really crowded. He's like, I had to go back to the car within 5 minutes of getting there. And I looked at him and I said, well, you know why that is? And he said, no. And then I had to explain to him shedding, and I sent him the links to my articles. But he was not aware of why that was happening until I explained it to him.
So what are some of the other symptoms that people have besides women and their menstrual cycles from shedding?
So fair amount of headaches, vertigo, sometimes nausea, sometimes fatigue. And then there's more rare things. I have like really bad stuff. Like one person had seizures after exposures, but most of the time it's things like that. Vertigo, just feeling bad, like malaise, just not feeling well. Sometimes even high blood pressure. It can vary, but like I said, far and away the most common is menstrual disturbances in women.
So do you think that they're going to, when they're still giving out the COVID vaccine?
Things people love about you is they believe you tell it like it is.
Says it like it is. He speaks the truth.
It's about time we have a man like Trump in here. They ain't afraid to tell it like it is, man.
We like him. He tells it like it is.
He says what he means. I honestly believe he's telling the truth.
She has no natural talent to be president.
She's very talented, and she has a husband that I also like very much.
Hillary Clinton was the worst Secretary of State in the history of the United States.
Hillary Clinton, how did she do as Secretary of State? Probably above and beyond everybody else.
Let's say Hillary is president.
Hillary Clinton, I think, is a terrific woman. I think she really works hard, and I think she does a good job, and I like her. I will build the wall, and Mexico's going to pay for it, and they'll be happy to pay for it.
I'm not going to pay for that fucking wall.
This guy used a filthy, disgusting word on television, and he should be ashamed of himself, and he should apologize, okay?
Listen, you motherfuckers.
I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. We'll beat the shit out of them. Political bullshit.
You're not going to raise that fucking price, you understand?
Donald, true or false, you've said the government should pay for everyone's health care?
That's false.
You've never said that.
Everybody's got to be covered.
Universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody.
Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side. He said I was in favor of Libya. I never discussed that subject. I was in favor of Libya. We would be so much better off if Gaddafi were in charge right now.
Gaddafi in Libya is killing thousands of people. We should go in. We should stop this guy, which would be very easy and very quick. Stop him from doing it and save these lives.
They're here illegally. You take them, they have to go back.
We have to show
some compassion. We just can't throw everybody out.
They have to. You're going to split up families.
Chuck,
you're going to deport children.
Chuck, no. We're going to keep the families together. We have to keep the families together.
But you're going to keep them together out.
But they have to go.
How do you throw somebody out that's lived in this country for 20 years?
North Korea has nukes. Japan has a problem with that. I mean, they have a big problem with it. Maybe they would, in fact, be better off if they defend themselves from North Korea. Maybe we would be better off, including with nukes. Yes, including with nukes.
And they said, I want Japan to nuke. I want Japan to get nuclear weapons. Give me a break.
But if you say to Japan, yes, it's fine, you get nuclear weapons, South Korea, you as well, and Saudi Arabia says we want them too.
Can I be honest with you? It's going to happen anyway. So it's only a question of time. I'm a conservative person.
The Republicans are just too crazy right. I mean, just what's going on is just nuts.
Bush says, I do not believe he's a true conservative. These people are stupid.
Do you identify more as a Democrat or a Republican?
In many cases, I probably identify more as a Democrat. The economy does better under the Democrats than the Republicans.
I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists.
What do you see as the biggest problem with the Reform Party right now?
Well, you've got David Duke just joined, a bigot, a racist, a problem. I mean, this is not exactly the people you want in your party. Wages too high. We're not going to be able to compete against the world. I hate to say it, but we have to leave it the way it is. I don't know how people make it on $7.25 an hour. I would like to see an increase of some magnitude.
Do you believe voters have a right to see your tax returns before they make a final decision?
I don't think they do.
If I decide to run for office, I'll produce my tax returns, absolutely.
There have been many presidents that have not shown their tax returns.
Actually, every single nominee since 1976 has released their tax
before
returns.
1976.
Nobody was worse to women or abused women more than Bill Clinton.
Look at the trouble Bill Clinton got into with something that was totally unimportant.
She's married to a man who got impeached.
They tried to impeach him, which was nonsense.
He was impeached for lying.
I'm the only one on the stage that said we should not go into Iraq.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. You know, I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
Honesty, Carter once said, I'll never lie to you. Would you say that, the American people?
I would never lie.
When I'm president, I'm a different person. I can do anything. I can be the most politically correct person that you've ever seen. I can be the most politically correct person in the world. And I can be the opposite.
The president has to be a great leader, and you have to lead by example.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
Like to punch him in the face.
I'd look her right in that fat, ugly face of hers.
Blood coming out of her, wherever.
He's a war hero because he was captured.
I like people that weren't captured, okay?
I don't know what I said. This guy will say anything.
Certain that Donald Trump has ever read outside of his own is the book of Hitler's speeches he kept next to his bed in the 1990s, according to his ex-wife. His ex-wife, he was very pissed when she released that information, okay? Because at that time he was still liberal. He didn't want people to know it at that time. So somehow she fell down the stairs and cracked her head open, right? All right, so we're going to get into this, and I'm going to show you this, all right? 92-year-old C-SPAN caller said he met Trump's father, a fan of Hitler and dictators. During C-SPAN's Washington Journal call-in segment, Pete, who identified himself as a 92-year-old from West Palm Beach, Florida, said Trump's father, Fred Trump, visited his village and was a fan of Hitler and dictators. Pete implied Trump got his views of dictators from his father. Now, keep in mind that Donald Trump was a libtard his entire life. Children are often heavily influenced by the views of their parents. Trump's father and Trump were sued for racial discrimination in housing, and Fred was once arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally for failing to disperse. The 1927 article reporting the arrest doesn't make it clear Fred Trump's status or association with the Klan. Don't his actual loyalties to the brewing years of World War II if they happen to live in the greater New York City region. New York and its suburbs in Long Island and New Jersey had a vibrant community of first and second generation German Americans, the latter having included Fred Trump Sr., a rising star in real estate, and retailing. Also active in New York, New Jersey region was the German-American Bund, or Amerika-Deutscher Bund, an organization that supported Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party and the goals and aspirations of the new Germany. The Bund had been created in May 1933 on the orders of German Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess. The first Bund leader was German immigrant Heinrich Heinz Spacknobel, who initially called his group the Friends of New Germany. In fact, the Bund was nothing more than an overseas extension of the German Nazi Party, and it took its orders directly from Berlin, outside of the town in Windham, on American soil no less, right? The height of the Bund's activities was a February 20, 1930 rally at New York City's Madison Square Garden. This is the rally that I'm talking about right here, okay? This is the rally that Enlightened Master is telling you that Donald Trump's father was in, okay? Sir Norman Vincent Peale was Donald Trump's 33rd degree Scottish Rite Freemason pastor. This is the seal of the 33rd degree. It's also the family crest of Donald J. Trump. Okay, Albert Pike, who is the most famous Scottish Rite Freemason of all time, was the head of the Knights of the Golden Order, who later changed their name to the Ku Klux Klan. I'm going to provide it. Okay. I'm not going to be nasty to people. I'm just going to provide the information. All right, that's what I'm going to do. The elder Trump was publicly, he was even sued for it, publicly known to be a racist, and he refused to rent his apartments in Queens and Brooklyn to African Americans. Now, that must be a coincidence. In 1927, there were few organizations for far-right extremists like Fred Trump to join. One was the KKK, which had its roots in the post-Civil War Reconstruction South. Another was Italian lender Benito Mussolini's overseas Fascisti, which was primarily composed of Italian immigrants to the United States. By the early 1930s, far-right wingers in the American North were fast to embrace the Nazis, and Kuhn's Bund was able to ready to answer the call and begin recruiting in its ranks. Fred Trump's FBI file, which includes the 1927 arrest at the KKK march, appears to be missing his pre-war and immediate post-war year activities. The file does not resume until the 1960s, when the FBI began monitoring the elder Trump's association with mafia syndicates in New York. Brother, remember I told you and I've showed you unequivocally that his brother had everything to do with the murder of and the torture of Nikola Tesla. In New York, old man Trump also suspiciously volunteered after dodging World War II draft to construct Navy barracks and garden apartments in at least 3 highly sensitive Navy ports in Chester, Pennsylvania, and Norfolk and Newport News, Virginia. Yeah, that's right. He was a draft dodger, to all you Trump dodgers out there. All 3 ports saw thousands of Americans and Canadian troops embarked for combat in North Africa and Europe. Some of these ships fell prey to German U-boats, which received intelligence on the Allied ship movements from Nazi agents in the very same port areas where old man Trump so generously bid on construction contracts with the Navy. Right here, with the Navy. Let me repeat his treason again, okay? All 3 ports saw thousands of American and Canadian troops embarked for combat in North Africa and Europe. Some of these troop ships fell prey to German U-boats. In other words, Americans got killed because of Donald Trump's father, which received intelligence on the Allied ship movements from Nazi agents in the very same port areas where old man Trump so generously bid on construction contracts with the Navy.
Trump knows just how much racial hate he stirred up in the blood parts of the folks in New York State. He drawed that colored line that we fought in the last war, and we ain't got no home in this world anymore. Beach Haven ain't my home, I just can't pay the rent. Down the
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy and the rest of MSNBC. And click on any of the videos right here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. And you can get more videos from MSNBC for free every day with our newsletter. Just visit